It was one of those humid afternoons when the air felt too thick to breathe, and the distant rumble of thunder threatened rain. Emily Parker gripped the steering wheel tighter as she drove down the winding road toward her childhood home. It had been months, maybe even a year, since she last saw her parents. She hadn't planned to return, but her brother Sam's desperate call had changed that. "Mom's getting worse, Em. Dad refuses to talk about it, and I can't do this alone," Sam had said over the phone 2 days ago. There was a weight in his voice that Emily couldn't ignore. She had packed her bags reluctantly, bracing herself for the emotional minefield that awaited her. Their family had never been the type to express feelings openly, and the cracks in their relationships had grown wider with each passing year. Now it seemed like those cracks were ready to split wide open. As Emily's car turned the final corner, the Parker house came into view. It looked the same as always, a worn-down colonial-style home with ivy creeping along the porch railing. But something about it felt heavier, like it carried the weight of all the arguments, secrets, and unspoken disappointments accumulated over the years. She parked the car and took a deep breath. "Here we go." Sam was already waiting on the porch, hands shoved into the pockets of his hoodie. He looked tired, his eyes rimmed with dark circles that made him seem older than his 35 years. "Glad you made it," he said, offering a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Emily stepped out of the car and gave him a brief hug. "How's Mom?" Sam's expression darkened. "Not good. Dad's in denial, as usual. He acts like everything's fine, but she's slipping fast." Emily nodded, her stomach twisting in knots. Their mother, Diane, had always been the glue that held the family together, but early-onset dementia had started eroding her memory and personality. Their father, Richard, was a man of few words, someone who believed that ignoring problems made them disappear. "Is he inside?" Emily asked, glancing toward the front door. Sam nodded. "Yeah. Good luck with that." Emily shot him a look. "Thanks for the warning." Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender and lemon cleaner, but it couldn't mask the underlying scent of stale air, like the house itself had been holding its breath. Diane was sitting in her usual spot by the window, her thin fingers nervously twisting the hem of her cardigan. Her once bright blue eyes were clouded with confusion. "Hi, Mom," Emily said softly, kneeling beside her. Diane blinked at her, recognition flickering briefly before fading. "Emily," she whispered. "It's been so long." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. "I'm here now, Mom. I'm here." Before Diane could respond, Richard entered the room, carrying a plate of sliced apples. "She already ate," he muttered, setting the plate down on the coffee table. Emily stood up. "Dad." Richard gave her a curt nod. "You're finally back." She bit her tongue, resisting the urge to fire back. It was always the same with him, passive-aggressive remarks wrapped in cold indifference. Sam leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "We need to talk about Mom's care, Dad. She can't stay here like this." Richard's expression hardened. "She's not going anywhere. This is her home." "Dad, she needs professional help," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "She could get worse, and we aren't equipped to handle it." Richard's jaw clenched. "She's my wife. I'll take care of her." Sam let out a frustrated sigh. "You can't even admit how bad it's getting." Diane, sensing the tension, shifted uneasily in her seat. "Don't fight," she whispered. "Please don't fight." The room fell silent, the weight of unsaid words pressing down on all of them. Emily exchanged a glance with Sam, and they both knew this wasn't going to be easy. Later that evening, Emily found herself in the kitchen, washing dishes while Sam leaned against the counter. The kitchen, once the heart of the house, felt eerily quiet without Diane bustling around. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," Sam muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "Dad's impossible, and Mom, she's slipping away right in front of us." Emily turned off the faucet, drying her hands with a towel. "We need to figure something out, Sam. We can't just let this drag on." Sam let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, like Dad's going to listen to us." Emily sighed, knowing he was right. Their father had always been stubborn, believing that accepting help was a sign of weakness. But this wasn't just about him anymore, it was about Diane, and what was best for her. "Remember that time he got mad when we hired someone to mow the lawn?" Emily said, trying to lighten the mood. Sam grinned. "Yeah," he said, "if I can walk, I can mow." Then he spent 3 days limping around with a cold muscle. They both laughed, the sound a rare comfort in the midst of their shared frustration. "Seriously, though," Sam said after a moment, "what are we going to do?" Emily leaned against the counter, her mind racing. "I don't know. But we'll figure it out. We always do, right?" Sam gave her a weary smile. "Right." The next morning, Richard's temper finally boiled over. It started with a small thing, Diane spilling a glass of juice. But it escalated quickly, with Richard snapping at her for not being careful and Diane looking utterly lost, like a child scolded for a mistake she didn't understand. "She didn't mean to," Emily said sharply, stepping between them. Richard glared at her. "She used to manage a whole house. Now she can't even hold a glass properly. She's sick, Dad." Emily shot back. "This isn't her fault." Sam entered the room, his expression tense. "Dad, stop it. You're not helping." Richard threw up his hands. "What do you two know about helping? You think you can just waltz in here and tell me how to take care of my wife?" "We're not trying to tell you what to do," Emily said, her voice trembling with anger. "We're trying to help, but you won't let us." The room fell silent again, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Diane sat quietly, tears glistening in her eyes as she watched her family fall apart in front of her. Richard's shoulders sagged, and for the first time in a long while, he looked old. "I'm doing the best I can," he whispered. Emily's heart softened at the sight of her father, this stubborn, flawed man who loved his wife so much that he couldn't bear the thought of losing her. "I know, Dad," she said quietly. "But you don't have to do it alone." Over the next few days, the siblings and their father sat down together and discussed real solutions. It wasn't easy, there were still arguments, and Richard fought the idea of outside help tooth and nail. But eventually, they found a compromise. An in-home nurse would assist Diane a few days a week, giving Richard some much-needed rest. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The day the nurse arrived, Richard stood awkwardly in the living room, unsure of how to let someone else care for his wife. Diane, however, seemed at ease with the kind woman who greeted her with a warm smile. "You're doing the right thing, Dad," Emily said gently, placing a hand on his arm. Richard gave a small nod, the fight slowly draining from him. "I just want her to be happy," he murmured. "She will be," Sam added. "And so will you."